The Prince of Frogs, an original fairy tale written by yours truly with illustrations by Lars Gabel. Long ago and far away, in a kingdom by the sea, there lived a prince on an island. He had been sent there by his father to keep him safe from rebels who wanted to do away with the royal family. The king dispatched his son to the island with orders to remain there until he had received word that it was safe to return. The prince stayed on the island at his father's pleasure, and his days were long and filled with sun. His nights, however, were another matter. They were cold and hard and lonely. Every night, just before sleeping, the prince would read to himself. One night, he came across a tale of a princess who had kissed a frog which had turned into a prince. "That's it," he exclaimed. "What I need is a frog to keep me company on these long, lonely nights." The very next morning, the prince pulled on his traveling boots and left the castle in search of frogs. He spent the whole day catching and kissing them without any success. In the evening, he returned to the castle, feeling discouraged, but nonetheless determined to continue his search the following morning. Next day, having found catching and kissing frogs to be a hungry business, he built a fire over which he roasted a few of the frogs which hadn't turned into princesses. These he ate with relish and a dollop of Worcester sauce. This went on for a week. Having captured and kissed 6,531 frogs, and having eaten about 50 of them without finding a single princess, he was gradually coming to the conclusion that he could be in the wrong place. What if there aren't any princesses among the frogs on this island? He asked himself. By then, of course, there weren't so many frogs left, uneaten or otherwise. So the prince made up his mind to leave the castle and the island, despite his father's instructions to the contrary. He swam across to the mainland and headed for the local pet shop. The owner of the shop had heard about this prince who spent his days catching and kissing frogs, so that by the time the prince reached the shop, the price of frogs had gone through the roof. Having bought and kissed every frog in the place and not found one princess among them, the prince declared that he would try elsewhere. It would be cheaper, and in any case, the frog that he was looking for would most likely never set foot inside a pet shop. For 3 months he traveled all over the kingdom, catching, kissing, and sometimes roasting and eating frogs. But alas, finding no princess. Finally, growing tired of this fruitless search, he thought he'd better return to the island before his father discovered his absence. Back at the castle, there was a message from his father telling him that the rebels were no longer alive and that he should come home immediately. The king also mentioned that he had a surprise for his son. Now the prince loved a good surprise, so he set off at once for his father's palace. At the palace, the king welcomed his son with the news that he had found him a princess to marry. The prince was delighted with this news, as he was by this stage pretty tired of kissing and killing so many frogs with so little to show for it. He was also fed up with the taste of frog. His father told him that the princess in question was being held prisoner in a pet shop by an evil wizard who had turned her into a frog. It would take nothing less than the kiss of a prince to turn her back into her natural shape. The king then gave his son a magical cape which rendered the wearer invisible and wished him luck on his quest. After many adventures, the prince arrived at the pet shop. Wearing his cape of invisibility, he crept into the shop, stole the princess from her pedestal, and took off for his island refuge. He didn't kiss the princess right away because they had quite a bit of traveling to do, and frogs weigh less than princesses. The very instant they reached the island, the prince kissed the frog and nothing happened. The prince was so shocked by this that it didn't occur to him that he'd been tricked by the wizard into stealing the wrong frog. He just thought that he was being punished by his father for leaving the island without permission. There, to this day, in the company of a frog, he sits on the island, dreaming of his promised princess. Somewhere, there is a princess in the guise of a frog, sitting in a pet shop, waiting to be kissed.